This is question 4, chapter 5. When I was considering job descriptions to review, I decided to use an example from a company I recently worked with who's having a high turnover situation with managers in their retail shops. Specifically, I reviewed a recent job listing for a cafe manager. Looking at the description, I'd estimate it's about a 40-60 split between organizational citizenship behaviors and the actual job tasks. The 40% on OCBs highlight expectations like being a team player, be motivated and productive, have high energy, serve as a brand ambassador, and embody company values, which I might add, the company values are not even in the job listing. These behaviors we know are important because IO research consistently shows us that positive workplace behaviors contributes to organizational effectiveness. However, I noticed there's a little disconnect between some of the expectations and the realities of the role. From some recent exit interviews, there were clear concerns raised around having limited or no support from their supervisor, unclear development opportunities, poor internal training and communication, as well as difficulty maintaining work-life balance because they're being expected to work well within their slotted weekly hours with no additional pay or benefits. The other 60% focuses on essential job duties that are common in retail and food service leadership roles, responsibilities like managing labor schedules, overseeing front and back of house operations, controlling inventory and financial records, and handling customer and employee needs. Those are the clear responsibilities that are required for the candidates to be successful in their day-to-day role and realities. So looking at the listing as a whole, I think there's several ways that the job description could be improved to attract stronger candidates or more candidates. First, I would address the fact that there's no company introduction or values, so I would prioritize developing that and listing it at the top of the job description. Next, I would keep the OCB requirements because we know they're important, but I would make those secondary to the task duties and list them as desired requirements. This would put the task duties up at the top under company intro and values. And since it's the first thing that a candidate would see, it's more important for them to understand if they are qualified to meet those requirements. Third, I would provide a more realistic job preview. Research shows that realistic descriptions help improve person-job fit and reduce turnover. This is because the candidates will have a more realistic expectation coming into the job. So in the listing, you can do this by outlining onboarding support, specify the training programs, or even add a statement of what success looks like, let's say 3, 6, or 12 months into the job. And then lastly, because compensation and benefits are not the strongest for this job, I would look to add an additional benefits or perks section. This would emphasize items that other employees would value, things like free meals during work hours, performance-based programs, employee recognition programs, or flexibility when available. So if these incentives were genuinely offered, highlighting them would improve attracting more applicants and offsetting the lower pay compared to competitors. I based all of these recommendations off of 2 studies focusing on organizational citizenship behaviors. The first, which is an influential study from Rotondo and Sackett in 2002, where they found that task performance was the most important contributor to overall performance evaluations, and citizenship behaviors were an additional factor that enhanced that effectiveness. In other words, a company needs both ability and positive workplace behaviors, but citizenship behaviors should not overshadow the actual job requirements. There was another study in 2021 that supports this concept. The researchers found that OCBs positively contribute to task performance, but they also emphasize that task performance remains a separate part of employee effectiveness. So in thinking about job descriptions, that means we need to balance both task requirements and citizenship behaviors while not overstating one at the expense of the other. And then in conclusion, I would not fully remove the OCB components for this posting, but refocus the description to clearly communicate the company's value and culture and prioritize the essential duties needed to perform well on the day-to-day job. The ideal outcome would be 1, the organization can now attract candidates who are both capable and more likely to stay with the company long term, and 2, give candidates a more realistic preview of the role and organization. Hopefully this will provide them a smoother transition from application interview process to the onboarding process, or from becoming an outsider to an insider.